I'm in the middle of recording the review for this MT12 Surface radio from Radiomaster. This is the very first radio that I'm aware of to be commercially produced for surface vehicles with Edge TX and Express LRS built in. And that's pretty exciting because it means it is infinitely programmable. And what that means is that before I've even finished recording the review of this radio, I've already thought of some things that I want to do to customize the programming and make it behave a little bit differently. So that's what this video is. This is a tutorial of how to and how I'm going to tweak this radio to make it a little bit more exactly like how I would like it to be. How you would like it to be? Well, the only way to know is if you watch this video and find out. I'm Joshua Bardwell. You're going to learn something today. And the first thing I want to change about this radio is something that happens when I first power it up. Ready?
Welcome to Edge TX.
So we're getting a throttle warning because the throttle is not quite exactly centered. That's not it, though. What I want to change is that the radio says stop when I first turn it on, and that's just kind of weird. The reason it's doing that is that there is a timer pre-installed on the radio, or pre-configured, I should say. The timer is based on this switch here on the underside, and I guess the thinking is that you can use it to help you monitor your battery life. We've got a 5-minute timer here, and when I press start, it starts, and when I press stop, it stops. And that stop is triggering when the radio is first powered up. Here's how we can fix that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the model key, and then I'm going to page left to get to the special function screen. And this is where the programming is that causes the start and stop lines to be read out when I press that button. I'm then going to scroll down to the second line, which is where the stop sound is read, and click the jog wheel one time to begin editing those values. And then I'm going to scroll to this last parameter here, which is the count parameter, and that is the number of times that the sound will play, although it seems like for WAV files they only are read once regardless. But I'm going to click one time to edit that parameter, and it will begin blinking, and I'm going to scroll up. I'm going to scroll up until I see an exclamation point here. And as confusing as this all is, that exclamation point there says, don't play this track when the radio first powers up. In fact, let's turn it off and test that.
Welcome to Edge TX. Throttle warning.
See, now it doesn't say stop when we power up, but if I press that button,
Start. Stop.
everything works as expected. I've actually passed this feedback back to Radiomaster, and it's possible that by the time you're watching this video, that change will already have been made in the radio's default configuration. If not, that is how to fix that. Frankly, I'm not actually a big fan of using timers. Like, what's the point of a timer? To measure your battery voltage and know when your battery's about to die. I rather just use the telemetry function of the receiver to monitor my battery voltage. And I think we're going to try to set that up too a little bit later in the video. But there's a couple other changes I want to make to the programming before we start working on the hardware of the car. And the next one is this. So we got these LEDs. When I brake, I get these police lights. When I pull a trigger, I get blue, green, red. That's cute. That's cute. That's marketing, and I'd rather do something useful with that stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that programming by pressing Model and page left to get to the Special Functions screen. And we're going to delete all of these RGB LED lines by long pressing and delete. Long press and delete, long press and delete, long press and clear. Then we will press page left one more time to get to the logical switches screen, and these logical switches LO2 through LO5 are the ones that were used to set the lights. So I'm again going to clear those out. It looks like we need to power cycle the radio because the LED is still going. Let's try power cycling the radio. And yeah, it's just sitting there blue. I guess that's the default. So let's do something useful with those LEDs, and let's also solve a problem that I've run into, which is that when I'm holding and working with the transmitter, I sometimes bump the throttle. And if the car is plugged in, it crashes into things. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sort of a safety switch to the controller. Here's how we can do that. I'll press the model key one time and page over to the left to the logical switches screen. Logical switches are kind of like physical switches on the radio. We've got these switches and the switch can be in a position. A logical switch is kind of like a two-position switch. It can be either on or off, and it is on or off based on some internal logic that you can program. In this case, I'm just going to walk you through the programming of this switch. And the first thing I'm going to do is tell you kind of like what I want the logic to be, and then I'll show you how to program the radio to implement that logic. And my thinking is this. Let's use this big button here on the bottom of the radio. That's a nice, big, chunky button. Let's use that as sort of a safety switch that disables the throttle whenever that button is pressed, and then you press it again to enable the throttle. So here in the logical switches, I'm going to go down to LO2, which is just the first empty switch, and I'm going to choose as my function, I'm going to scroll down to sticky. I'm going to choose for V1. If I just click one time and that begins blinking, and then I press this switch one time, you'll see it will fill in that switch. Click one time to stop modifying that value. And then for V2, I'm going to do the same thing. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a sort of a toggle out of that logical switch. So take a look here at the top of the screen. Do you see LO2 is bold, and that means the switch is sort of on. And if I press this button again, now LO2 is not bold, and that means the switch is off. And without going into a great big treatise on what a sticky switch is and why it works the way that it does, this is how we set up a switch so that when we press the switch one time, the logical switch comes on. We press it again, the logical switch comes off. It's sort of taking this momentary switch and turning it into a toggle. Now we've got a logical switch that tells us the sort of toggle position of that momentary. The next thing we need to do is have that have some effect. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to page over to the special functions and scroll down to the first line of the special functions that is not used. In my case, it's line 3. Then I'm going to click one time to begin editing that, and then long press. And the first thing we need to do is we need to tell the radio what switch is going to trigger or activate this special function. And in this case, it is going to be a logical switch. And you'll see it fills in LO1, but LO1 is not the logical switch that we tied to this button. It was LO2. So I'm just going to scroll down until LO2 is input there and click the jog wheel one time to stop modifying that value. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to actually, the default setting is what we want. We're going to override channel 1, which is our throttle channel, and we're going to override channel 1 to be at the 0 position or the middle position. So it turns out that the default values here are exactly what we want. And then we will activate this checkbox, because if we don't activate this checkbox, then this line is not active. I guess they wanted to give you the ability to like disable and enable lines selectively, so you have to go over and do that. And now you can see that, first of all, let's test that this special function is working by pressing the button one time and it lights up. Press the button again and it clears out. Yes, that's as expected. And if we go back to the main screen by pressing the return button, and then we page, let's see, there we go, to the channel monitors, we can see here that if I pull the throttle and then press this button, it locks us out at 0. And we can see the over here appear here, which means that a special function is overriding this channel. Nothing. Interesting. This is not returning exactly to center. We'll fix that in a second, I guess. Override. Okay. So then, there's one more thing I want to do, and that is I want to be able to know whether my override is activated, and I'm going to do that with the LEDs. I'm going to press the model key one time and page to the left to the special functions. We're going to go down and we're going to make another special function, long press, and choose logical switches and LO2. And then our function is going to be RGB LEDs. And we're going to say that when LO2 is activated, we're going to have the LEDs be red. That is, LO2 is activated when we are overriding the channel and everything is locked out. So that's going to be red for stop. And I'll hit the return key one time and go down to the next line. And follow along carefully with me here. I'm going to click once to modify this value. I'm going to long press and choose logical switches. I'm going to choose LO2, and then I'm going with it blinking, so I'm still modifying LO2. I'm going to long press and choose invert. And what that does is it says not LO2. So we've got two lines here. One for when LO2 is active and the switch is pressed. One for when LO2 is inactive and the switch is not pressed. And we're going to set that to RGB. Stop. RGB LEDs, green. Great. Now, as I press the switch, you can see that the LO2 and not LO2 go back and forth, and the LEDs should move, although, as I've learned, it looks like we have to reload the model or repower cycle the radio before that takes effect.
Welcome to HTX. Throttle warning.
So now it's green, which means that it is working. The throttle is working, and if I press that again, it goes red, and the throttle's locked out. That's kind of backward. Like, it should power up with the throttle locked out, shouldn't it? I can do that. Model. Special functions. So I'm going to need to invert this one. The override needs to be the other way around. Let's invert these. So click once to modify. Click once to modify. Now LO2 is flashing. Long press and invert. And we're going to do that for the LEDs as well. Click once. Click once. LO2 is flashing. Long press and invert. And the same for this one. Now I have just inverted the logic. And if we power cycle, now it's working. Okay. The next thing I want to do is get rid of this
Start.
countdown timer and actually monitor my battery voltage. It's 2023. We don't have to just rely on a timer to know how much longer we can keep driving. You can use the timer if you want, but like, I'm not going to just manually press start and stop every time I am driving and stopping my car. In order to do that, I'm going to need to use a receiver that has battery voltage sensing, and these ER5C and ER5CI receiver from Radiomaster do have that. There's this little plug here, or on the ER5C, it is actually a little plug with a retention clip, but either one of those is used for voltage sensing. And what I'm going to do is just plug that in and then stick this receiver down. And I'm going to need to connect this wire somewhere where it is connected to battery voltage. Now, one place to do that would be like to put it in the backside of this plug. Oh, yeah, it just pushes right out. Oh, that was surprisingly easy. Great. Excellent. That's what I needed. Now we can just solder this guy on. That'll do. That'll do. I saw it go. That'll do. That'll do. Woo! Jam it back through, apparently, is all you do. Boom! Okay. Now we have a voltage sense wire coming out of our plug. Fantastic. That is just fantastic. If I'm here on the main screen of the radio, and I long press the tele for telemetry key, here is RX bat. That is the receiver battery voltage, and it is automatically picking up not the 5 volts that it's being given from the voltage regulator on the car, but 7.8 volts. It is picking up the actual battery voltage. Yay, that's fantastic. And if I even want to, I could even make a warning to read off an audio alert when the voltage is low. Wouldn't that be cool? Let's do that. But first, let's get rid of this stupid timer. To get rid of the stupid timer, we're going to go Model, Page Right, and we're going to go down to Timer 1. We're just going to turn that off. Great. That's not working anymore. Doesn't exist. And we can also press Model and go to the Special Functions and get rid of this Start and Stop. Delete.
Stop.
Delete. Great. Get rid of that. And then, so the first thing we're going to need to do is make a logical switch that detects when our battery is low, and then we will set up a special function to play an audio alert when the battery is low. The logical switch is going to be LO3, just because that's the first unused logical switch. the function is going to be a is less than x. V1 is going to be a long press there and go to telemetry. And we're going to find RxBat. There it is. When RxBat is less than, what do we want the warning to be? It's a 2-cell lithium battery, so that would be maybe 3.5 volts per cell, let's say 7 volts. So when RxBat is less than 7 volts, then what will happen? Well, let's say when RxBat's, then LO3 will become true, and we can page over to special functions and say single press to modify, long press, choose logical switches, LO3. We're going to play track. No, play value. Play value. Play track or play value? It can read out the voltage. Let's do play value. We'll long press here and choose telemetry. And we'll again find RxBat. And then we'll read it one time. So what that should do is when the battery voltage goes to 7 volts or below, it will start reading out the battery voltage. There are various ways we could tweak that logic. For example, we could have it read it one time. We could have it read out. We could just have it say battery low. There's various ways we could tweak that. I'm going to leave that alone now. I might come back and tweak it later if I decide I don't like how often it's calling out the voltage or what it's saying when it calls out the voltage. We'll have to see about that. But I'll leave it for now. So we've got a pretty good setup here. Well, there is a lot more that you could learn about EdgeTX and Express LRS. This is not the be-all, end-all of tutorials. Just a little walkthrough of the kind of things that are possible and an excuse for me to set up my own freaking radio. I will continue to be screwing with this radio, and hopefully I will continue to make tutorials about it. If you want me to keep making tutorials like this, then please consider joining my Patreon. Patreon is a website where you can subscribe to me for as little as $2 a month, or more if you feel like I've earned it. If you've just come here because I started making content about service vehicles, then probably I haven't earned it yet, because you're just like, who is this guy? What is he doing? What does he know? And that's cool. Hopefully you'll keep watching the content. Maybe you'll get into FPV drones. Maybe I'll make more content about service vehicles. I don't know. Anything could happen. Keep watching the content. I'll keep making the content. And maybe the day will come when you'll go, dang, I'll get a lot out of this guy's content. It's time to join his Patreon. If today is that day, link in the video description below. And if you're looking for a full review of this radio, I'll put a card on screen. I have released that video at the time that you're seeing this, and you probably want to check it out. It's a pretty good radio, though. I like it. I'll see you there.